authority. And so we suspect any time the authority is going to take away some of our rights, and we want to fight them on this. We'll fight them every legitimate way we can, but if all else fails, we'll just do what we think is right. So we need to recognize that authority, with all its power, has to learn to exercise that power in a way that is beneficial to people and in line with what God's rule has established. In Proverbs, when it's talking about authority, it's talking mainly, or almost exclusively, about the king, because this was the authority in the among the Hebrews. The king was the ultimate authority. And so they had to learn to respect the king, obey the king, insofar as they were able, but the king very often, alternating almost between good kings and bad kings, often the king was a bad king, and he would impose laws on people which were in conflict with God's laws. And so they had to be a choice. But they very often didn't have a choice of who would be king. You were a king usually by succession. My father was a king, he is passing the crown on to me. And so they had to battle with authority. And we have to use wisdom in our submission to authority, even though at times people with authority wield it badly. We've all experienced bad bosses who were almost impossible to work for. We had to work to bring income into our families, but we often find that this is difficult. And so people under authority are maybe rebellious. They don't graciously accept the authority. And so we need to steer a line between these, between obedience and between resistance, but not rebellion. There is wisdom for those who are in authority. This is what you need if you're going to be in authority. And we extend the instruction for the king to all who are in authority. Firstly, in Proverbs 16 and verse 10, we're told a divine decision is in the lips of the king. His mouth should not err in judgment. In other words, when a person in authority makes a judgment, he should not err. He's going to make sure that it's the right thing. Judgment here implies that he is handling a case which is brought before him, and so he must not err in judgment. And there are often errors in judgment. We find this rather more widespread than we expect. But those in authority who are making judgments should do their best to make sure that these are not, do not contain error. And then I'd like someone to read from Proverbs 25, verses 4 and 5. Proverbs 25, 4 and 5. All right. The Hebrew parallelism here is between something which has been cleaned, or some metal which has been cleaned from its dross. The silver has to be cleaned from its dross before it is useful at all. And so that's the point that's being driven across. the king has to have evil removed from him, probably by training, because we learn that evil is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod and reproof will drive it far from him. So we are born almost with the capacity for going wrong. And we have to train our child and discipline it so that it knows the right way to do things. And when that has happened, then the king and his throne will be established in righteousness. And the Jews knew this full well, because as you read their history through the books of Kings, and the summary of their history in 2 Chronicles, you learn, or 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you learn that every king came with his own set of baggage. Some were good kings. They came from a good parent, or they saw the evil that the previous king had been practicing, and they decided, I will not do it that way. I will follow God. And so we have many kings who put reforms in order. Some kings had to reform everything from religion up to the courts. Other kings inherited a good system and followed that. But we need to have a king whose throne is established in righteousness because wicked had been cleared away. And so you cannot use the metal until it's been refined. I used to manage a photographic lab where we processed film, and film used to have a lot of silver in it. And after the exposure had been made and converted into a negative, the remaining silver was washed out, and it collected in our, what we called our fixing baths. And you could take that and you could deposit the silver out by electrolysis. And you would end up, I ended up one time with a nice little bar of silver, but the little pile of silver chips that we gathered had to go to a refiner before it could be of any use to anybody. So refining has to take place, impurities have to be removed so that the silver that you are going to sell is 98% pure. And so it is with gold that's recovered from the earth. It has to be purified to be 98% pure at least before it can be used. If it has a lot of impurities, it's too hard to work, and it needs refining, more refining. So these are the things that have to happen. We have to take out the wicked influences. And among the wicked influences, the number one influence, which we recognize today in those who are judges or rulers, what's the number one influence that has to be taken out of the king? You don't know it? You know, but you just don't want to say. It's money. Greed. Well, it's represented by money. And almost the universal sin is greed. And wherever greed takes hold, then there's corruption of every kind. Whether it's corruption of the earth through all of the waste matter that we dispose of, or whether it's corruption of the king because he's not going to listen to you, he's going to do what this guy who supplied the money wants done. And we see that in a large scale in governments all over the world, and including ours. You can buy any law you want. If you have the right lobbyists who have the right bribes, who make the right agreements and the right exchange of money, you can get any decision just about you want. And we find this in many instances, just too many to discuss. So I need somebody to read from Proverbs 28. verses 15 and 16.
Like 15, 16?
Yes.
Okay. Like a roaring lion and a rushing bear is a wicked ruler over poor people. A leader who is a great oppressor lacks understanding, but he who hates unjust men will prolong his days.
Okay. So the ruler who's likely to be re-elected repeatedly is the one who hates unjust gain. He prolongs his days. He stays in office because he's good for the people. But a roaring lion and a rushing bear, if a lion is roaring, he is after you. And if a bear is rushing, he's after you. And so that is what a wicked ruler is over a poor people. He's just hunting them. He wants what they have. He wants their lives even. He has no mercy at all. A leader who's a great oppressor lacks understanding. He doesn't understand what a ruler should be. He doesn't appreciate God's order for rulers. And so because he's lacking an understanding, he's a foolish ruler. He will succeed for some time, but he won't prolong his days like the ruler who hates unjust gain. So we see Proverbs is laying down principles. They're not laws, but they are principles. And you need to understand the principles by which the world works and society works, and see that the just way and the right way is God's way, and that following the way that many rulers follow is foolishness. But that's the world. Proverbs 29 and 4, since I've got my page open here, the king gives stability to the land by justice, but a man who takes bribes overthrows it. So there's no just rule if you can bribe the ruler. He will give the opinion to the richest person, the one who's willing to give more to him. And so money, bribery, is not to be a factor in how the king makes his decisions. And there are lots of bribes that can be given to a king, as Proverbs explains in chapter 31. It's very easy to subvert the ruler, and you just have to look through history, even briefly, and you'll find a lot of examples of this. So I'm going to read that, verses 2 to 5 of 31. Do not give your strength to woman, or your ways to that which destroys kings, so they can be subverted by women. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink, for they will drink and forget what is decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. So booze can corrupt the king. Give strong drink to him, that's another subject, another topic on strong drink. Strong drink is strongly advised against, excuse the pun. But drink is not forbidden, but drinking to excess or drinking strong wine is definitely frowned upon in the Proverbs. Proverbs 31, now we go on down to verses 8 and 9, and I'd like someone to read for me. You can see the extent to which corruption was often the temptation of the king. The poor could not afford to provide the money that the king sometimes wanted. And so the rights of the afflicted and the needy had to be protected. And so advocate for the mute and the unfortunate and those who didn't have the funds to corrupt the king. So they need help. People need help when they come to deal with authorities. Sometimes authority is unfair. It even comes down to every level, to county level, to even the police and so on. There are ways that they can be subverted. There are ways that they can receive accusations against those who are not guilty. There are ways who county inspectors can give a favorable report if there's enough money in it for them. And we think that this doesn't happen. We're not a nation that's like that. Yes, we are, because we're human. And all humans can be tempted. That's the devil's work. So we're constantly against what the devil is doing to try and harm us. And he doesn't play fair. He's got his own rules. Do it any way you can. And so we can be corrupted. We can be corrupted from our faith because we see that some other way will pay off for us in some way. Satisfy our desires, where our desires are being inhibited by God's word, God's law. And we say, no, I don't agree with being limited in this way. I want to express myself like this. I want to express my sexuality this way. And God says, no, this is the way. And yet our world is trying to show us that there's something better, there's something easier, there's something nicer than all of that. And the devil has got all kinds of instruments at his control. The movies and television try to tell us that there's a lifestyle which is more entertaining, more pleasurable than our limited Christian lifestyle. And so they'll spread every kind of sexual activity as being fun, profitable, enjoyable, and something that we should definitely follow. Don't be inhibited by those people down at the church. And so beware of this kind of corruption which is constantly before us. The duties of the king, or the duties of those in authority. First of all, Proverbs 25 and verse 2. Okay. I don't know why they make the parallel between God concealing a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. Kings need to investigate what they're judging. They need to investigate what is being practiced. And on that investigation, real investigation, not just a casual investigation, which so often happens, but really looking into the facts of the matter. To search out a matter is to investigate. And Proverbs 20 and verse 8. All right. Interesting statement. He disperses all evil with his eyes. What do you think that implies? He just looks at you and all your evil is gone? Jan? Yes. All right, how does he do that with his eyes? Why are his eyes involved? All right, he's watching, he's searching out the actions that are involved. He's an investigator. He is the investigator of all investigators because he sees and knows everything, and he knows what you're doing, whether it's right or wrong, and so he's going to dispense justice based on that. And so he's going by the facts. He's not going by what a guy tries to pretend he was doing or wasn't doing, as the case may be. So he administered justice by investigating to find the truth.
You know, that from Mr. Harris, is that from possibly from his past experience? Or is that from his possibly past experience that he's had? Like
The king,
that he's been given?
I think the king might realize that this is his duty. He's been taught this by his father, if his father was a good king, or he realizes that a lot of things are being judged not on what can be seen to be true, but just on what you're told. And people will lie to get justice for them, for their cause, as opposed to what is really right. So he searches everything out. A lot of people pass judgment just on hearsay or on a glimpse of something they've seen, and they interpret it the wrong way. They jump to conclusions very often. You see that happen all the time. When people have arguments, they have jumped to a conclusion based on, I don't know, some thought that came to them. And so that has to be cleared up by investigating properly. And that's the thing that kings have to do. Okay, the next one, the king gives stability to the land by justice, but a man who takes bribes overthrows it. So you feel unstable when you don't know whether right is being served or whether just the person who's paid the judge the most money. And so bribes overthrow stability for a land, because you can get things judged any way you like. Just provide enough money to the right people and they'll get it done for you. For those under authority, there are some things that we need to be doing, some thought patterns we need to be following. So turn to Proverbs 14 and look at verse 35. We need to be in 1435. Yeah. Wrath. Yeah. So, king's favor is towards a servant who acts wisely. And so, as subjects to a king or subject to a boss or a governor or whatever authority figure may be involved, if we act wisely, they will be favorably disposed towards us. And so if you have a boss and you're sloping off, you're not doing the work properly, you're haphazard, then he is going to be angry because you're acting shamefully. But if you act wisely, you're doing the work well, in time, he will look favorably on you. And so, for all of us, whoever we work for, a Christian should be giving the very best work that's possible, that possibly could be done. Because that's what we're doing as those who believe in God and follow him. We give our best, and we give it consistently, and we give it cheerfully and on time. Proverbs 16 and verse 13.
Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and he who speaks right is love.
Okay. What are righteous lips? For ladies, is it wearing the right lipstick? What are righteous lips? They don't lie? But more than that even, certainly they don't lie. When you speak what is right, even if it's to your disadvantage. Yes, I did mess up. And if we mess up, we should fess up and get things right, set things right. But people should know that they can rely on our word. Did this happen? Yes. Did this happen? No, it didn't. Even though it's popular to think that it might have happened that way, if we're speaking what is right, and this involves the idea of what is true. Truth should be the absolute with us. The truth, as far as we know it, as far as we're able to search it out. We shouldn't sugarcoat something pretending it's true when it isn't. And so, righteous lips are the delight of kings. 22:11. From the way we're jumping around in the book of Proverbs, you understand why I chose to do a topical study, because in every chapter a lot of things are mixed up, and you might not get the real impact of the message if you just read through verse by verse. You would have to be very careful and read very slowly. Proverbs 22 and verse 11. Okay, so the king, the ruler, the authority, whoever it is, loves purity of heart and speech that is gracious. You can speak in such a way that it's kind of pointed and nasty, even though it's true. And so be careful how you speak. People might react to a positive message in a negative way if the positive message is spoken in such a way that it just sounds ugly. You know, people speak about the ugly truth. Well, we should make it the beautiful truth instead of expressing it in a way that makes it unacceptable. Okay, here's an interesting thing from Proverbs 23, verses 1 and 2. Okay, what is that saying? Your behavior needs to be modest and under control. You know, a lot of people, when they eat, they're eating in such an ugly way and in such a, I can't find the word, they're just eating like gluttons, and that doesn't win favor with the person who has to pay for the meal. And it doesn't gain favor with the ruler. So if you're a man of great appetite and you're invited out to eat, be careful. You may actually be displeasing. And Proverbs 25, 6 and 7, something that we have to carefully guard against in, I think, our society particularly. So listen to these words. Okay. Have you seen this? Some of the most cringe-worthy happenings are when somebody stands up and claims to be such a good person. What do we call it when a person is doing that? What's the term we use? Pardon? We call it arrogance. You're in the company of people and say, no, okay, aren't I the greatest of all of your managers? And the manager doesn't have you in mind at all. And he says, well, you're not the one who's up for a promotion. And that kind of happens. There are people who are so boastful and arrogant that it's just hard to be around them. And if they have to advertise how good they are, then that might be false advertising. And people detect that insincere approach. And so for those who are under authority of some kind, it's better for the manager to call you out and say, you're up for a promotion, especially if it's in front of all the board and you're given this honor. But if you claim the honor and he said, no, I actually had her in mind, then you're completely deflated. And it shows a flaw in your character. Proverbs 25:15, an approach to the king. Very interesting way of putting it.
Patient.
Yeah.
Forbearance. A ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue breaks the bone.
Okay. You can't persuade a boss by an arrogant outburst claiming the right way to do something. He is not likely to listen to that. But if you use a soft answer, then that can persuade him that this is a good thing to consider. Also, when somebody is making a complaint and they're cursing you and they're ranting at you for something, if you have a soft answer, then it takes a lot of the heat out of the argument and you can resolve an issue quite quickly. But if you respond with an angry outburst of your own, then that's very, very often likely to make the situation more difficult, if not impossible. Okay, I see our time is up, and thank you for your kind attention. Next time, hopefully, I will be discussing anger, how to handle